All right, welcome back to PitBox Social. Again, joined by my forever co-host Tyler Hoffman, and today we have been graced with the presence of the legendary Pat Wilmont.
Oh yeah, baby!
Yeah, baby.
As he flexes, Pat is, I believe, an Atlanta native. Yes, am I correct in that, Pat?
You are born and raised.
Atlanta native. Very good. There's not many of us. I'm also from Atlanta, born and raised. So when we can find local Atlantans, it's always a special connection because Atlanta's changed a lot, and to find people who actually have lived here through all that nonsense is good.
Yeah.
So yeah, Tyler is not from Atlanta, but I think he's adopted. So.
Oh, he's been here long enough now.
Yeah, I mean, over 10 years, you kind of become adopted, and we start accepting you. But if you can't name the Buckhead bars from 20 years ago, you're not a native.
I'm sure Tyler can do that.
Maybe
he went to Roswell High, so I mean,
okay. So there you go.
We frequented the Buckhead bars together plenty of times.
Not in high school.
Not in high school though. No.
Of the legal drinking age of 21. So Pat, you're kind of so Road Atlanta is your home track. So tell us how you got into motorsports childhood. Were you karting? What got you into it?
Yeah, so I grew up at Road Atlanta. Basically, first time I was there, I was under 2 months old. So my dad raced an HSR and SVRA. He ran a couple different Mustangs and a Shelby, a 66 Shelby, and an HSR. So from the time I was born until I was like 5 or so, I was at Roebling Road, Road Atlanta, Sebring, all the Southeast tracks basically. So kind of grew up around it, but my dad quit racing when I was about 5 or 6. Obviously, it's really expensive. So he thought instead of spending those thousands of dollars on racing and it being still pretty dangerous at that point in time in the 80s, especially driving old cars from the 60s, he didn't want to get hurt having a new kid and that kind of thing. So he quit. But I had always been around race cars, around racing and around fast cars and that sort of thing. So when I was like 6, they bought me a go-kart, a yard cart, and I wasn't tall enough to reach the pedals. So me and my dad would drive it around the neighborhood. And as you do, being young in the 90s, not thinking about safety, we wouldn't wear helmets or seatbelts or anything like that. So we took it out blasting down into the cul-de-sac one day when I was like 6 and rolled the sumbitch over, and he got hurt. I got hurt. I think that's kind of what turned me off from racing for a while. But when I was 15, I started getting back into wanting to do karting. Andretti's here in Roswell was really close to my house. And so when I was 17, my parents bought me a league, entrance or whatever into their league on Saturdays. And that's where it all started for me. So I started doing that on Saturday mornings and had, I guess, a natural ability to be pretty quick, and things went, well on the karting side, but I also wasn't racing against it wasn't like I was doing KA 100 or anything like that. I wasn't racing anybody that was super special, but I had a huge head after that. And I was like, man, I'm going straight to the top, and, I'm going to be this young kid that shows up and I'm going to break the mold. Even though I don't have any money, I'm going to break the mold and I'm going to the top of motorsports. And so here I am at 34 and nobody knows who I am. So as you can see, that thing didn't really work out for me.
I don't think that's true. So I guess, what, and Tyler, you worked at Andretti's, or did you do any Andretti karting as well? Andretti's. Tyler, did you race in the leagues in Andretti, or were you just working there?
I was working there. I think I did some of the league mornings and stuff. But that's how Pat and I met. So Patrick and I met. I remember I was in high school and Pat was in college down at Georgia Southern, and he came back for like summer break or something, and I had just started. And I think it was probably winter break, but I had just started, and he comes in, he's got like a little posse with him. He's got like his hot blonde girlfriend, thinking he's hot shit. I'm like, who is this asshole? And he comes in, just doesn't wait in line, just walks behind and just puts his helmet on, gets in a cart and goes.
Oh,
and it's like, what is this? Yeah. And then just I was like, oh, I run this place. This is my indoor karting facility. And then
my name's Andretti.
That's pretty much. I thought it was Patrick Andretti as far as I knew. And And then I was like, this guy's a dick. And then like we used to all race after work, which was fun. And like a couple of like the ex-employees would like show up. Like we close at, I don't know, 10 or 1 depending on the night, and they'd show up like 30 minutes before and just hang out until we were done, and we'd all race every night. And so after like him showing up a couple times, we got to know each other, and we ended up being buddies all through college and stuff. So that was fun. But yeah, that's how I met Pat, was through Andretti.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. But I guess
right.
part of, we've talked about this before, like racing in general, you have to have an ego.
Yes.
You can't not have the confidence in the ego to do this sport. It's just not, it doesn't compute otherwise. I mean, if you're just this kind of meek, laid back, I mean, even in the track, like, me from really a track day perspective, if you're just meek and in the back, you're not going to progress. You got to have a drive to do something.
Yeah. No, I agree. Totally.
So,
I mean, yeah, for sure.
If I'm gonna drive it down in on Pat, like I got to think I'm better than Pat. I know I can do it, and he's gonna do the same thing. Like that's how the sport works.
And I think that's even in for me from a track day perspective. Like if I'm up in the advanced group and I know there's some meek guy who might not make the pass, like I'm not going to let him pass me, or I'm going to hang way back, which messes up my whole session. Which I'm sure you got to have that in the, when you're wheel to wheel with somebody, you got to have confidence in yourself, but also confidence in the guy next to you that he's not going to hit you. Though it happens.
Knowing the guys you're racing against is a huge part of that whole dynamic, right? And that takes time of just being in the same series over and over and racing against the same guys a bunch, right? So when you first come into a new series, it is tough because you don't know who the top guys are a lot of the time. Or you don't know how they race. Like you might have watched them race before, and you think one thing, but then you get out there and it's like, oh, this guy's a dick. So it changes,
I mean, it's true.
Yeah,
100%. I think it's from it's funny. Like I was just telling Tyler, we're gonna do some Le Mans review. Le Mans was just this past weekend. You watch, if you're watching at one corner, say some guy's just awesome at turn 1. Okay, great, man. He's got turn 1, but you get to turn 5, 6, and 7. You're like, oh, he doesn't know what he's doing. You don't know that till you're out there with him, right? I mean, that's the hard part. And so much of the data in the video is sometimes secret, not so much anymore. But I know, like probably a few years ago, people were holding that stuff closer to the chest. But now, people are using YouTube and social media to propel themselves, so they put out stuff, or you have video of somebody like, no, this guy's an idiot.
Yeah. Well,
so I think it goes both ways.
Who would do that?
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Well, I think there's a lot more of the latter on social media and YouTube than there is of like, guys that they don't want to give away their secrets, right? So, or they'll put in they'll put in a duff lap, or they'll put in something where they splice together multiple laps, that kind of thing, so that you don't see a full one, or get the lap time that they're doing or something like that. But I mean, you got to have an ego. Like I've always had one, as Tyler just said. Like when he met me, that is the typical thing that people think when people meet me. They're like, God, this guy's an asshole.
It's terrible.
And it's like I don't want anything to do with this guy. And then, fortunately, like yes, I do come off that way, but I think after people get to know me, generally people like me, and I like them, and we have a good time.
You're a lovable guy.
Yeah.
You're a lovable
years later,
like, guy with the mustache.
15 years later, Pat's one of my best friends. So like, if going back to 16-year-old Tyler, like, would I ever have thought that? No, not a chance. Like, this guy's a dick. And like, here we are. We play golf every week. We hang out all the time. Like, turns out he's a decent dude, I guess.
Decent dude. So what, Pat? What in your motorsport? I hate to say motorsport journey. It sounds very cliche and it's grand thing. But like, what led you to make? And we're gonna lead into this. The next big question is coaching versus instructing. So what made you decide to really pursue coaching as a career path along with racing? I mean, I know racing is the passion, but really your day-to-day, your livelihood right now is instructing. Well, I
mean, like, what the hell else am I going to do, right? I mean, I'm
well, there had to have been a moment you're like, this is what I'm doing. But are you doing it to feed the passion?
Let's back up half a second here. And how about for those that may not know, will you define the difference between a coach and an instructor?
Okay, so let's go into that. So, as both of y'all were at one time instructors. So, what is the definition of an instructor in terms of DEs at Porsche Experience Center? What is an instructor in your minds?
It's meat in the seat, man. That's what, when I think of instructor, like, and funny enough, when I got hired or I did my interview at the PEC, this was one of the questions. It was, what's the difference between these two? And to me, the difference is an instructor is somebody there that's, and no offense to any of the track day guys that are going to listen to this, but it's a guy who's getting free track time, by coaching or by instructing. Sorry, with by being a coach, it's more of a, it's not just a racing thing. For me, like, and Tyler's the same way with Wesley Slim. Like, I have Stephen Clemens as a client of mine that I've coached since his very first track day, and when he was 17 years old. And it's a life coaching thing outside of the track as well. You're not just coaching them how to be better at the track, but you're teaching them what to do outside of the track and how to make relationships, how to build relationships with people and that kind of thing. And because it's not like, if you're just instructing, then yeah, you're showing up for a paycheck or you're showing up for free track time. You're just doing it at the track. When you become a coach, that's when you start to really teach people more about the lifestyle of racing and behind the scenes stuff, not just at the track stuff. That's how I feel about it, at least.
Absolutely, I totally agree. And like, it turns into more of, I don't want to say like a family thing, but like Wesley's like a little brother to me, is like I'm sure Steven is to you. Like, it's you really open up yourself to somebody and try to just help them have the best path. And it's it's a life coach with a focus on motorsports is exactly what it is.
Yeah. So kind of my perspective on it, again, from I've mainly what I do is track days, as y'all know, and then I've done some time trial stuff. But the instructor is meat in the seat is probably the best like baseline description, unfortunately, because really it's making sure you have someone in the right seat, basically pointing to where, okay, hey, remember, you go right here. Okay, there's someone behind you. Yeah. It's kind of really just, it's a safety thing, especially from like a track day organizer. It's really a liability buffer for the organizer. Say, okay, hey, we had an instructor in the car, and so we've covered CYA'd covered our ass, pretty much. And there are some instructors that can give coachable advice on the track. There's definitely some of those out there, and I've had conversations with multiple DE organizers talking about, hey, you have all these instructors that you're giving free track time to, but that's really all you're providing is someone in the right seat. Have you thought about, taking your top 10 and doing more quote unquote coaching? Now, some of the guys probably still aren't qualified. They're not doing it. And that's from a DE perspective. Really, taking mistakes that are habits and breaking those habits and getting the driver out of that stuff. That's kind of the extent of the coaching, because me and Tyler have worked together, and it really is, before I get in the car, even if he's not working with me, he's popping over. What's the goal? What's the goal for this session? So I think y'all hit the nail on the head between an instructor versus coaching. And it's also an experience level. Like, if you're a DE guy, do you need a coach? Maybe, if you're trying to hit a certain goal. But at some point you don't need an instructor. I think that's a big difference too. I think even if you look at any professional sport, most of these guys have a coach still. Tiger Woods has a swing coach.
Multiple.
Nadal, multiple coaches, and it coaches for nutrition, exercise, your headspace, your life. I think that's the difference, where you get to a point where you need specialized instruction is coaching.
Right.
And maybe that's a good way to look at it.
I think, and instructors too, like, so with instructors, they're typically going to follow a curriculum of some sort, right? Let it be a school or, MSF and like the Motorsport Safety Foundation or whatever curriculum that track day organizer has set forth. But they're going to follow a curriculum, and then they're going to, they'll get you from, they could be a day one to intermediate, or a new advanced guy, and then a coach is going to take you to the next step. And he's typically the coach isn't going to be in the car. He's looking at data and helping you find those last 2 seconds.
Yeah, and I think too, like you're saying, Adam, the difference between a track day coach, somebody that does it for free, versus somebody like Tyler or I, is there's a big gap there between those two people. And I think that people, they don't ever realize that until they actually hire a professional driver, professional coach. And then they're like, oh my God, like I didn't realize I was doing all this stuff wrong. And that's the other problem, is that a lot of times they're taught wrong things, right? They're taught the wrong way. And so we have to go in the first day. If we're with somebody for 2 days, we have to go in the first day and break all of these bad habits that they've been doing just to try and gain something for the next day. So, and that's not a slam on those guys that do it for fun. That's not supposed to sound mean or bad. It's just, there is a big difference between somebody who does it for free and somebody who does it for their life, in career.
100%.
Yeah, we need the track day
What's
guys
the biggest,
too. Like,
and this is for both of y'all.
Definitely not a slam on the track day guys. Like, we need those guys. They're a big part of the sport, and they're great to get a bunch of people on track. Yeah, exactly. We need the track day instructors.
They make us look a lot better.
There you go. But like, okay, so I think you hit a good point. I think you hit a good point though. What is, from y'all's experience with coaching however many people y'all have coached, which is probably a good amount of people, but what is the biggest thing that you're having to correct going from basic instruction to coaching? So like, what's the one thing that you mostly have to fix on that day one?
Brake release. Brake release is, like, for me, the number one thing that everybody messes up. And the older guys were taught not to trail brake. The new guys have all been taught to trail brake. And the last, like, depending on how new somebody is, the last 2 seconds to the last half a second is in the brake zone and how you release the brake pedal. In my opinion, we're always working on how we get off the brake pedal better. And Mario Andretti said it. He said, he was asked, what is the difference between the good drivers and the greatest drivers? And he said, it's how they use the brakes. It's not anything about the gas pedal. And that's why when you go to a racing school, there's not ever going to be an exercise when you go to a racing school of how quickly can we get to the gas pedal. That doesn't exist. We don't have that exercise. But there are going to be multiple exercises of how we use the brakes and how we release the brake pedal. So I think that right there shows how important the brakes are to a driver.
Tyler, is there any? Is that kind of the same one?
That's it, man. Yeah, that's it.
No, I know.
That's pretty good.
That was,
and then it's getting people to actually use enough initial brake pressure to then be able to properly release the brake. Because a lot of people, when you roll on the brake, we can give away a little something here, but like when you roll on the brake too soft initially, and then you get to your turn-in point, the car isn't slowed down enough, and then often you'll see somebody bury the brake pedal mid-entry, and then you just park it at the mid-corner, and then so like it's getting people to go through the braking process from start to finish properly is typically the biggest thing.
Yeah, totally.
100%. I agree. Even from just doing the track day stuff. I mean, learning how to use the brake, learning how to make your car brake the best, I think is also interesting, because I know Tyler, we've talked about like my M3. It's a weird braking process on that car because it has the boosted cylinder, from the factory. It's like 10A at Road Atlanta. It's actually a soft initial, but then into it. You almost have to set it and then into it. Whereas like you get in a GT4 Club Sport or something that has a dual master cylinder, you're just smashing it. There is definitely a quickness to the brake, and Pat, I think you've probably seen the same thing in different cars. Are the M4, are the BMW M4s that you've raced, are they boosted or are they dual master cylinder?
Yeah. So the interesting thing about the M4 is just recently at Sebring in March, I realized that there's a whole nother like 1/3 of brake pedal to use in that car that I didn't even know about. And it's really strange because, and I'm going to try and say this as delicately as possible, since I'm driving a BMW and have been for a while. The ABS systems are not great. on the M4 and M2, in my opinion. The M2 is much worse. The M2 CS racing is much worse than the M4, the GT4. But I found at Sebring going into the hairpin that, and this was an oh shit moment where I was like, I'm going to take this guy out, where I realized there was way more brake pedal there and way more ABS that I could actually use to my benefit. But I got halfway through the brake zone and buried it even more, and it started stopping even better. And I was like, no wonder everybody's out braking me, because I didn't think that was there. I didn't think that extra pedal was there. And so it's really strange, but it's almost the same kind of feeling that you're talking about in your M3, that I don't get a lot out of the first like pressure. I can't just bury it on the first pressure, but halfway through the brake zone, I get a little bit more. And yeah, it's in the ABS, but the ABS isn't like, it's not super intrusive on the M4. It's really not bad. The M2 though it's the worst brake pedal feel that I've felt in a lot of cars. I mean, it just, there's nothing there. It just completely, it chops back on your foot the whole time, and you feel like you're not stopping.
Is that a Bosch system in that car? Do you know?
I don't think so in the M2. In the M4, we do have a Bosch system, I believe. I should know that answer, but
I was in one Saturday, and I actually don't know. I didn't think to ask, but it didn't feel like a Bosch system to me, unless it's like, it could be like the M4, which is a little bit older now. They've got the M6s out, and so I wouldn't think it's that.
I'm like Cole Trickle, right? Like I just drive the car. I can't. There's a lot of things that I should know that I don't know, and people ask me like, I was in a conversation recently. They're like, so is that a square setup on all four corners, or is it staggered? And I was like, yeah. I was like, it's square.
It's square.
And like, I had to text Adam Thomas. I was like, it's a square setup, right? Like, I'm not dumb, am I? And he was like, no, it's square. I was like,
okay. For those of you that don't know what a square setup versus staggered, it's tire size. So same size tires in the front and the rear of the car is a square setup.
BMWs like square setups.
That's what
we've
I
run.
felt like a moron though. I was like, that's something you should definitely know.
No,
good question. Let me get back to you.
Yeah.
So
I don't know the tire size of my car.
Oh, the round.
So what if someone came to you, and this might be one of your clients, maybe this is Steven, I don't know, Pat, but like, hey Pat, I want to start racing full time. I want to do this. I've never raced. What is the typical time frame from, okay, hey, I've started my track days, to, hey, I'm going to be in my first race? You know, some people it's like 0. They just start in their first race, you know, if you do champ or some of these other ones. But, you know, what's the typical path? You know, for people who maybe are trying to get into racing, you know, they're track day guys now. What is the typical path to get ready for that first race?
Wow, the first question is how many zeros are in that checkbook of yours? I mean,
money's not the option.
Well, I mean,
we're working in a cashless society. We're working in a cashless society here, guys.
We can go run Ferrari Challenge without touching a tire to pavement, probably right off the bat.
We could talk about Ferrari Challenge. We just, me and Tyler just experienced a lot of that, and it's. We'll save that for another day because I have opinions on it, but I haven't made my. Well, okay, fine. We'll go into it. So we got invited to basically. Well, we were told that in order to progress in some of the Ferrari ecosystem of their cars, is that basically, hey, listen, if you want some of these special things, you gotta start racing. You gotta start doing something with Ferrari Challenge. So it's a pay to play system, which is fine.
Yeah.
You know, at least you know the game. But we get there and we're talking to some friends. We meet with the team principal of our local dealer, and got a lot of great information. The cars, the 488s, I think are really, really good. I don't think the cars are the problem. I think the
lack of ability,
the clientele, and even other team principals and other drivers are like, listen, man, if you're in the back of the pack, you're going to get hit and you're going to spend a bunch of money. Like just in body work. I'm like, well, I don't want to do that. And now I think in my ability, I don't think I'd be backpack, but it's still one of those where it's like, man, you wreck one of these cars. And to your point, Pat, how big is the checkbook? A guy hit a rear quarter panel and it's, you know, it's $80,000.
Yeah.
Like, earlier we were talking about like knowing the people that you're racing with. And I will say at one point of my career, like early on, I definitely would. I was quicker because I was running away from everybody. Like I was fucking scared of getting hit, and I was just going. Like, get me the hell out of here. And I could very well see that in Ferrari as well for someone
It,
that didn't want to deal with the knuckleheads.
and my guess is any of those single make series are kind of like that. Because I've heard the same thing in the other single make series is like, stay away from that guy, or hey, stay out of the back of the pack.
Well, the problem is, yeah, I mean, the problem is with single make series is that all the cars are almost the same. So the racing is much closer, right, than it would be in a series with BOP. So, the same thing can be said about MX5 Cup. It's just on a,
cheaper level.
smaller, a cheaper scale car wise. But I mean, dude, I'll take the Pepsi Challenge with an MX5 Cup driver and a freaking Ferrari Challenge driver any day of the week, dude. The MX5 Cup guys that are running in the top, 6, 7 day in and day out, or week in and week out, those are some of the best drivers in the country. And I mean, I'll go ahead and say it. I don't feel the same way about Ferrari Challenge guys. Like the top 5 or 6 just have the biggest checkbook, in my opinion.
It's a motivation thing.
Yeah,
it's 100% a motivation of, hey, I'm in MX5 because I want to race.
Yeah, and I'm trying to go somewhere.
And some of these guys in these single make series is, I'm doing this to further my collection or to further just an experience. I 100% agree with that.
How many kids are in Ferrari Challenge?
None.
Yeah,
right. There you go.
And I think that's a good point to make. And there's nothing wrong with Ferrari Challenge. There's nothing wrong with Lambo. There's nothing wrong with Carrera Cup. They all serve a purpose. They 100% serve a purpose. But when you look at them, the guys that are in the top of those fields might be trying to do a career of it, and they just have different size checkbooks. And there's nothing wrong with that. But like the average guy out there is maybe just making laps and wants that experience of being a race car driver.
Well, and I wouldn't say it's just Ferrari Challenge and Lambo either. I mean, like that same thing's happening in GTD and SRO and everything. Like
Agreed.
it's guys that have money, that are wanting to play a race car driver for the weekend, and look like a superstar. And I can't bash him on that. Yeah, I can't bash him on that. Like I'm, like Tyler and I and you two, probably Adam, like we would, if we had, a few million more dollars in our bank account, then we'd probably be doing whatever we wanted racing wise.
100%.
And it, that would change the dynamic. Am I jealous? Yes. Does it piss me off? Of course, because we can outdrive 90% of those people that are out there driving every week. And we're driving a couch most of the time. So it's frustrating, but I can't fault them for it. So it's just, that's the nature of this beast now.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like racing has always been, you look back 60s, 70s, 80s. I mean, it was always, it is a rich man's game. It is. I mean, at some point, in order to get the entry fees and to get the car proper and all that stuff, it's part of the game. But it is unfortunate, and I like things like WRL and these other series that are becoming more prominent. They're not quote unquote professional racing, but it's giving drivers and coaches that maybe can't write the checkbook just to go straight to a GTD seat. It's giving, I believe it's giving a lot of exposure. Have y'all seen your exposure going up because you're in that paddock and, at more races? I mean, is that help? Is that kind of grassroots racing now that it's becoming quote unquote, maybe not as grassroots anymore? Is that helping the driver?
I think it's helped. I think it's helped a lot of people. I think for me, it's helped me just stay in a seat and kind of stay relevant a little bit. Yeah. I don't know if it's really like helped my exposure a whole lot, but also like, I've been racing with a team that it's just for fun. Like these guys are just having fun. They're not trying to progress anywhere. It's just like our IMSA deal that we have this year. Like we're making memories. That's all it is. Right. So, and everybody's a volunteer. So the thing is like you talked about the 60s and 70s, like at least up until the 90s, like you had a shot. If you were really good, you still had a chance. Somebody would pay for you to go and race. Somebody would give you an opportunity. All of that changed, midway through the 90s or early 90s, even like late 80s or so when some of the drug kings were in the sport and started to make headway with their racing that way. But with WRL now, sure, like it's kept me in a car, and I've gotten to drive multiple cars over the past few years at multiple races. I think Tyler has probably helped you more than it has me because you've been with good teams and that kind of thing. I mean, you were just with round 3, so like that's a stellar team. So I think for certain people it has helped. And yeah, I mean, I think it is starting a grassroots like endurance series for sure. But at the same time, you got to look at the classes because like GP3, yeah, is like grassroots, but dude, like GTO, that's straight up GT4 cars, right? And it's $15,000 for a seat in one of those cars already. I mean, it's in WRL's only been around for like 7 or 8 years, like really been around for like 7 or 8 years, right? And we're already at a point where, I mean, I can't go and drop 15K on a seat to go run a GT4 car. Like it's just not, it's not in the cards for me. So I think we're quickly reaching a point where it's going to be out of reach for a lot of people. And to go back to kind of the Ferrari challenge thing, like WRL has been seeing a lot of issues lately with people wrecking, and it's not typically the guys that are in slower cars. It's usually guys that are able to stroke a check and go run a GT4 car that might not necessarily have the resume behind them to be in that car, and they're making really dumb mistakes and they're wrecking cars and that kind of thing. So, you know, I think yes and no. I think there's an entry level, you know, grassroots part to it, but I think also we're at a peak of, hey, like this seat's 15K and you're gonna write off a $220,000 M4 or Aston Martin or, you know, Mercedes, whatever it is that they've got now. So, you know, I think it's a big gap between GP3 and GTO of type of driver.
For sure. And I will say for Daytona, WRL was last weekend. And there, like, WRL, that was, especially for Daytona, like, there was a driver that was ejected on lap 1.
Name him. Say his name.
I actually don't know his name.
What did he do?
I don't know. He hit 2 cars is all I know.
On lap 1.
He hit everything. Yeah.
But isn't lap 1 under caution?
No, like the first green light.
Oh,
like he made it. You know, actually, I don't know that. I know that they it showed them on timing and scoring, but it didn't show them completing a lap until 12:30 in the afternoon.
It's you, Home Slice. It's
dude,
you.
I actually don't know his name, but I can tell you exactly what it looks like. But yeah, so
what team was
he got he's a guy with a beard, like a big beard on him. But if it's who I think it is, but. Other than that, like the race was super clean. Like there wasn't any big ones. Like there wasn't any. I mean, it was the cleanest race. It's probably the cleanest WRL race I've ever seen or heard of or been to. But I also, you know, it's interesting.
Also rained for half of it.
No, it didn't. It didn't rain. It didn't rain until
only
like
did 7 hours.
We had a lightning. So this was what was weird. Is we had a lightning delay at like 2:30, and it struck once. And then we went 30 minutes. We were back racing, which is really uncommon for Daytona or for any lightning storm. There was one strike of lightning, and then like we went back green, and then like 7:30 or 8:30, whatever. Once it started getting dark, there was lightning, and then it monsooned for the last 2 hours. But no, the WRL series was really, really clean this weekend. But you're right, you know, you do see it a lot in this amateur pro-am kind of level of racing, and you also like someone said over the weekend that they thought WRL was going to be like, you know, the new SRO because of really what the price of everything is now, because IMSA's gotten so expensive and SRO costs what IMSA used to cost. Mm-hmm. And then like now you've got this kind of this middle ground of where where WRL is, and it's expensive, but you know, instead of spending $60,000 a weekend to do 2 sprint races, you know, you can spend $15,000 on a seat and get more time in the car anyways. So
seat time is undeniable for the cost for sure. You know, I was just saying like for me, like I can't go and spend $15,000 to, you know, a weekend to go and do it. Right. But also I think like for somebody in my position, that'd be a poor choice in $15,000. Right. Like I'm not going to do well there. And Penske's going to be like, hey, I saw you won the WRL race. Like, why don't you hop on with me next year in NASCAR?
Come on over here. Let's do something big. No, but you put in the time that you've got the knowledge and the expertise that like, you're the guy that they bring in to coach up the team and get everybody up to speed. And
that's the other, right. that's the other thing, right? Is that like it is an outlet for people like Tyler and I that we are able to take clients there and we're able to go race and be able to stay in a seat and make money and that kind of thing. So it's great for that kind of thing for sure. I mean, it's perfect. But yeah, I'm glad to hear that Daytona went better because like the last WRL race I got to do was VIR last September. And that was one of the worst race weekends I've ever been a part of. I mean, obviously I had my big one, but there was a graveyard full of GT4 cars essentially that it was just insane. I mean, there was like 7 or 8 cars, like missing wheels and stuff like that. It was crazy. So something had to be done. And I just think there needs to be more force involved. Like I totally get it. Like those guys are the guys that are coming back, right? The guys that are paying this kind of money are the ones that are keeping the series going. But you have to, at some point in time, you have to put safety of drivers over making a buck. And
I know it. Yeah. I know at one point in talking with RJ was about, if you're going to be in a GTO car, you have to have more of a resume than just, hey, I cut the check.
Mhm.
There was like not a licensing idea, but more of like, hey, you need a driving resume. Like, hey, you need to have done one other WRL event in a lower class car incident free, at least while you're in the car.
Yeah.
To then be able to move up. But again, I think that's a tough thing for them to make a decision because then,
it goes back to ego.
100%.
It goes back to ego, right? Like, I mean, you have a Ferrari Challenge guy come out that's done one race in Ferrari Challenge ever, and he's like, "Well, here's my Ferrari Challenge license," but they don't know that he's only done one race, right? So I think what should happen is it should be like what they do at the Nürburgring. You start in the RCN stuff, you start in a lower class car in GP3 or GP2, and you prove yourself over a weekend or two that you're not going to be an idiot, and then you can move up from there. But I think it should be, layered. Like you shouldn't go from a GP2 car to a GTO car unless you have an extensive resume behind you, because there's a drastic difference between driving a GP2 or 3 car versus driving a GTO car and how to manage traffic. It is like the traffic management is 100% what the problem is, because guys see it, and also guys that are in a GTO car are like, I'm coming through. I'm the faster car. They've got a blue flag. They should be out of my way, is the thinking that they typically have. And that's not the way it works. And you have to be patient. It's a long race. And I know they say this at every driver's meeting, but we're still having wrecks with guys plowing through a slower class car because they're not waiting. They're not being patient. I mean, at VIR last year, man, they had a huge one at the entry of the S's, because a GTO car tried to go up the inside of a GP3 car at the entry of the S's. And it's like, dude, if you wait 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and get out of the S's, everything's fine. But now you just rode off 2 cars, and it's stuff like that that's really troubling.
I think we see that because of the renter, because the renter model is a big part of that. Because if you don't have the team mindset with you while you're in the car, and your job is to turn laps, keep the car clean, and get back to pit lane on time. If you're out there for your 1 hour sprint race, when you get in the car 2 or 3 times each day, those are the guys that are a problem. If you go out there and this is my moment, it's endurance racing. It's about the team. It's about the pit stops. It's about having a well-prepared car. If you go out there and just try to burn it down every time you get in the car and you don't save anything for the next guy, which the GT4 cars aren't too bad about that. They're great cars. But especially in like a GP car, you got to manage the equipment a little bit. And if you really just think it's all about you, then, well, it'll be all about you in the stewards room. So it'll catch up to you.
Do you think a big part of it, also why people jump straight to GTO, is because they don't want to have to race a manual car for 8 hours? No, I mean, seriously, me and Tyler have had this conversation.
We don't know how to.
Well, but so there's a barrier of skill and knowledge of that. Yeah. Driving listen, I only really started driving a stick shift car a year ago on the road. I have no interest of doing it in a race situation or even just a track situation. I have no interest. I just don't. So I get it. I mean, there's
Come on, Adam. Come on. You sound like a renner right now, dude.
Because I would be.
He's not gonna race his car.
You're killing me.
Well, we're trying to. While you're talking, you want me to rent my car?
Well, yeah, but you're not gonna race it.
You're the team runner at this point.
Listen, I'm a great manager. I'm a good,
Dude,
do this.
You sit back, you collect the check, and if they write it off, you collect an even bigger check.
It's
insured. It'll be fine.
Win-win, bud.
See, now you're helping Tyler's case here.
Damn right.
But
my boy.
What is when someone has their first wheel-to-wheel race? What's the biggest mistake that you see?
Just one.
It's a safe space, Pat.
Just one.
Yeah.
What are the biggest? What are your top 3 mistakes that you see that are correctable?
That are correctable.
I got a good one.
Any order.
I mean, I think being scared is like the first thing that I think of. Like, guys are, and probably rightfully so. Like, I get it. We've all had our first race before, and I know all of us were shitting our pants when we're getting behind the wheel, and I get it. But like, there's a lot of guys that really they step on their dick on their first race, like hard, and they fall back. I'm sure we're going to have to edit that out, but like,
I'm just going to put a parental guidance. Like, by the way,
it just
not for children.
Guys being scared and not like, they get scared because there's other cars around, and then they don't do the basics after that. They get scared and then they're just like, oh, I'm going to stay back here in the back and I'm not going to do anything, because it's comfortable in the back. Whereas I think you would learn more if you actually like nut it up and just, went for it. Like, I mean, don't wreck, don't do anything like, stupid, but like still race, but don't just give it up. Like, I've seen multiple guys that they'll do their first race and they're like, they'll be around a bunch of cars and they freak out and then they just fall. Like, they just start falling. And it's like, dude, like, what am I doing at that point as a coach? Right? I'm just on the radio like, okay, keep it up. Like, let's get back into it. Here we go. Like, hit our marks. Right. Like, eyes up. Remember that. Eyes up. Like, I mean, it's just, at that point, you're a babysitter on the radio. So stop being scared. That's easy for me to say at this point, but stop being scared.
It becomes an experience thing. Yeah. I mean,
to speak to that too, like, because that's a really great point. And what most people, you don't think about until you do it is like, if you just drive at pace, there's way less traffic. If you're letting people through and you're trying to, the first thing that popped to my mind was being too nice and like trying to get out of people's way and all this 100%. Shit that we talk about. You see it at track days all the time.
That's a good one too.
Stay online and like we'll get around you. Don't worry about it. But like,
make them pass you. Make them pass you.
Make them go the long way. If that's the way it goes.
Yeah, don't move.
But if you drive the car hard and you just drive at pace, then you don't see nearly as much traffic because you're probably going to be 5 seconds a lot faster. When you're just trying to like fall back and let everybody through, like, you're just constantly going to be doing that. You're going to, stepping on your dick's a good way to put it, because it's exactly what you're doing for an hour and a half.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right. So we're going to start wrapping up. We're wrapping up now.
Okay, great.
No, but
what else we got here?
So I think Tyler, what do you mean by F16 here?
Yeah, so Pat's done something pretty unique that not a ton of people know about. Pat got to ride in the jump seat in an F16.
It wasn't an F16. Let's back up. It wasn't F16. It does sound way cooler being an F16, but
I thought it was.
It was a L39 Albatross, which is like, and this is exactly how the pilot described it to me. He said it's the Spec Miata of fighter jets, but he was like, yeah, it'll pull 5 Gs, but we're not going to be going like super, super fast like an F16 or 18 or something like that would be. That whole thing was pretty interesting, though. That was like 2017. Yeah, there you go.
That's cool.
So they were like old. They were planes from like the Soviet Union.
Soviet trainers probably.
Yeah, pretty much. And this guy, actually Ashton Harrison, when I was dating her, she was coaching the son of this guy, and he had a company that had a government contract on training pilots and stuff, and C-130s and these albatrosses and that kind of thing. So he had this one at a hangar in where it was over in Kennesaw. What's the small airport in Kennesaw?
You're up at McCollum.
McCollum, yeah, it was at McCollum. So he told me, he was like, I have to take this thing up like once or twice a month just to shake it down and make sure everything's right. And he was like, there's 2 seats, so if you ever want to go, let me know. And I was like, hell yeah. So, and here's the other funny thing.
Dale, yeah.
Dale, yeah. So the other funny thing is that his daughter used to date Tristan Nunez with Mazda. And so Tristan got to go up and do this as well. So I was kind of like comparing myself to Tristan Nunez, and I was like, nah, I'll be fine. This is going to be great. And it was cool, man. Like the whole briefing was like basically how to eject. And like if he seems like he's dead stick and not moving, then I need to get the hell out of there, like type of thing. And dude, it was wild. Like, and you wear the whole jumpsuit, you wear the helmet and everything. Like, I did a Facebook Live for most of it, which was incredible. People loved it. It was really cool. But I was kind of freaking out. Like, I'm not a big flyer. I don't really like flying, honestly, that much. But this was an opportunity that doesn't come around very often. So I was like, I need to take it. And so he goes through the 3 different ways that you can eject. And he was like, the biggest thing is bird strikes. Like, if you see me leave, he was like, you better be right behind me. And I was like, okay. And he was like, if you see me not responding, you better be out of here. He's like, let me die type of thing. I was like, holy shit. I was like, okay. And so
got real.
Yeah, it got real pretty quick, but we took off, and there was no like playing around, man. It was like, it was like Blue Angel shit, dude. He ripped that thing back, and as soon as he ripped it back, I was like, my stomach's turning. I was like, this is a mistake. It's like, I don't know why I'm doing this. And so we went up, we flew up over Lanier. We did like some barrel rolls and stuff like that. And like, I was totally fine with that. And he was like, okay. He was like, we're going to do this G warm up. And he explained this before we went up. He's like, we'll do a G warm up for your body, and then we'll do like simulated dogfight. And I was like, that sounds awesome. And so we go up, and he's like, all right, we're gonna nose down, we're gonna gain some speed, we're gonna pull a 5G turn to the right. I was like, okay, cool. And we started to pull this maneuver or whatever, and I'm like, I feel like I'm in Top Gun, dude. I'm like holding on, I'm like doing yeah, dude, I'm doing the breaths and stuff. And dude, I'm like, even at 5Gs, I see stuff like starting to gray, and I'm like, oh my god. And so dude, we pull out of this bank, and he was like, how are you? I was like, man, I'm great. Like, that was fantastic. He waited like 45 seconds. He was like, how are you now? And I was like, I'm not good. And dude, I had my little baggie out. I was throwing up, dude. I pulled one 5G turn, dude, and we had to take it back to McCollum because I was bitching out, dude. I was so sick. It was unbelievable. So I didn't get to do like any of the dogfight stuff. And man, Tristan Nunez made it through the whole dogfight.
Oh no.
I was so pissed off. Here's what's crazy though, is so we make it back to McCollum, and on the way back, he loses communication with the tower, but I can hear them. And so now he's like, and I can hear him, but he can't talk to them. And he's like, all right, he's like, I'm gonna need you to like land us, basically. Like, you got to talk to them, and like, whatever they say, you got to relay and all this kind of shit. And dude, I was like, no, I was like, I don't want to do this. Like, I was like, what if I'm throwing up to me? Like, so we made it back. And like, literally as we're landing, this plane's, doing this on the way down. And dude, I am throwing up in the bag as we're coming down. And every time he lands this thing, everybody comes out of the tower and out of the buildings, because he usually does a tactical landing, which is super rad. And he goes really low over the runway and does like a big loop and lands the thing. Well, like, he couldn't do it with me because I'm throwing up. And so all these people are super bummed, dude. I'm like, I'm facing bag like as we're landing. Oh, dude,
race car driver couldn't hold his stomach.
Oh, I was so mad, man. I was so mad. And he told me, he was like, don't worry. He's like, it took me like a few months for my body to get used to it when he went into the Air Force. And he was like, I can't make it 3 laps in the passenger seat of a car before he's throwing up. And I was like, okay. I was like, it makes me feel a little bit better. That was in February of 2017. We went to Daytona in June. And I shit you not, on the banking, the first time in the M3, up on the banking and having G's go from my neck to my butt instead of like side to side or laterally, dude, I started getting sick again. and my stomach like remembered February. And
I've
dude,
been here
I was-
before.
Remember.
Oh my God. I was going through, I will never forget it, man. I was going through NASCAR 2, and I was just like, this is going to go away, right? Like, come on. Like, this has to go away. And it eventually did. But I was like, man, I'm going to throw up again. This is ridiculous. I bitched out. It was bad.
That's rad though, man.
Well,
Like, I don't know many people
That's
that
pretty
have
cool, though, man.
been able to go up in a plane
That's
like
pretty
that, and like I think that's a cool story. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
I gotta figure out how to go do that.
Hell, I mean, you can probably just call him. Well, I don't think he's flying anymore. He had some kind of accident or something, not in a plane, but he had some kind of fall or something in Hawaii on a hiking trail or something like that, and got hurt. And so
It's always something stupid.
I know it's always something benign, right? Like,
Don't hike. Like
yeah. Dude
Like,
flies.
Well, I don't
fighter,
hike.
Yeah, flies fighter jets for 35 years and then falls down and hurts himself on a
Twist an ankle.
trail. It's like, it's crazy, man. That's how it happens for us too.
yeah,
It's
I know,
always
right?
something stupid.
Be careful playing golf. You know,
Oh,
you
dude,
throw out your hip.
Today I hit my knee with with the club on accident. Like I was walking and it was really stupid. I hit my knee, but dude, it hurt so bad. And, like, it took me a minute to regain my composure. I was like, man, this is how it happens. You play golf, you fall down one time or something, and then your care's over. It's ridiculous.
Because we're over 30 now.
Yeah.
Shoot,
Did you get that
30
new
is
putter
just-
yet?
My life's pretty much over.
At least you know. That's why you're playing golf.
Well,
you know?
yeah. Right. Exactly, man. I mean, I think there was like a meme. It said guys pick up they pick up golf or grilling or working on cars. And, like, that's what they stick the rest of their life to, right? And so
I think it's like by the time you're 35, you have a choice to make as a male.
yeah.
You either get deep into World War II history or you learn how to smoke meat.
Yeah, there you go.
That's pretty much it. Well, Pat, this was an extremely entertaining episode. It's going to be the first one that we have to put a parental guidance on,
Perfect.
though none of it was bad.
Sorry,
You know,
It's already over? Damn, we just got
over,
here.
man. I know,
We didn't
man.
even go over anything.
We'll have to do
I know,
part
right?
2, I think.
We'll have you back on.
But I think we're gonna have to come up with a new nickname for you, like Pat and Maverick thrown up in the bag, Wilmot. You know.
Maverick.
Not after what he just posted about the second one. I don't think so.
Well, that's true. We're gonna end on this. Like, I can't believe that you did like the second Top Gun. I don't. I think I gotta take your card.
Bro,
Like,
that was one of the worst
Clip a
movies
corner.
ever made. It was one of
Yeah.
the worst movies ever made.
And
100%.
on that note, we are cutting you off, Pat, so that you
Top Gun Maverick,
You're
top
hammered.
5 worst movies ever created. Awful.
unpopular
Why?
opinion. Not
Dale
held.
would agree. Dale
No,
would agree.
Dale would not. Dale
would,
would
dude.
want to be.
Dale's an American.
Dale's too American.
He's an American, so he knows it sucked.
No.
Dude, why would
No.
you take that plane? Why would you take that plane and go do that mission? There's absolutely
they
no
had, man.
reason. Why would an F-14 start up after sitting there under? I mean, for how many years was that thing sitting there? And it just starts. Give me a break.
Okay, and do you like the Fast and Furious movies?
The first 2, and then it went to
Okay,
complete success.
you've redeemed some quality back.
Yeah, first
Yeah.
Because
two
at
was
least the
good.
first 2 are the only.
The
good
second
ones.
one at least had like Ludacris in it, man. Ludacris from
Luda?
Atlanta, so he's my boy.
Second one was good, but the first one's the OG.
First one is the only really good one because then they had to stop street racing. But all right, on that, Pat, I want to thank you for coming on and sharing some fun stories and some knowledge. We'll have you back on. This was a little too much fun. I think we got to do. I was given the suggestion that we have to do reaction videos. So I got to figure out the best way to do it. Maybe like monthly reaction to stupid track videos or racing, and just we need to drink bourbon.
I like that.
Can we use the videos that they put up from the Nürburgring every month or every week or
Oh,
whatever
yeah.
Oh
it
my
is?
lord, yes.
Hey,
There's
there's
just stuff and shit
there's-
every corner.
There's a thing on YouTube that puts up the wrecks of the week from like every
Yeah.
series in the world.
Yeah,
So, I
if
mean,
it's
that'd probably
motorsport
be
a good
compilation or whatever.
I gotta find it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I gotta find it. I think we got to do something like that because I think if we have the right group of rotating people, it could be a really good continuation. Of
We could do
this.
like a 5-minute segment at the end of each one and just watch
Oh,
cars
Lord,
crash.
Yeah,
We gotta fill some
And if,
time.
and if you're listening on Spotify, then you can just try to guess what crash it is. Because
Listen to his tire squeal.
We'll send you- we'll we'll send you a T-shirt if you can guess corner and track. We'll send you a T-shirt.
That's pretty good. I like that.
All right, guys. On that note, we're gonna end this episode. But Pat, thank you for coming on. Tyler, as always, thank you for co-hosting. I'm Adam. This is PitBox Social. Y'all have a great week. Stay safe on track. We'll talk to y'all soon.
peace.
See you
Hell
guys.
yeah.